So I'm going to start. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Newcomers webinar session. I'm Anshul Malhotra. I'm a graduate student at Boston University. And my research focus is on the security of network protocols. More specifically, I look at the vulnerabilities in protocols like NTP, DNS, BGP, TLS, and then use tools from cryptography and game theory to improve the security and reliability of these protocols. I'm actively involved in several working groups, more specifically the Network Time Protocol Working Group, and then DNS Working Group and CFRG. And we'll talk about these groups later in my talk. Well, this is my 8th IETF now, and I'm really excited to have you all here. And let's get you all started. So first off, okay, first of all, I would like to thank Scott Bredner and Mike Johns for preparing the earlier versions of this slide deck, of this presentation. They've done a great job, and we would like to thank them. Also, I would like to mention that there are other members of EDU and MeetEcho team who are present in this webinar. I'll be presenting the slides, but feel free to ask questions and raise hands whenever you have any question, or you can also type your question in the chat window. And we will be posting the relevant URLs that I'll mention during the talk in the chat window. But feel free to ask any questions and interrupt me whenever you feel like. Okay, so there will be 3 sections to this presentation. The first section is Introduction to Newcomers Activities at the IETF meeting that you'll be attending at the end of March. Then Introduction to the IETF structure and its related organizations. Then we'll talk about the IETF week in a nutshell. And then we'll provide some additional resources and the key people that you can contact for additional information. Again, I'm going to say feel free to ask questions after each section. Okay, so, all right. The first slide, this is a very, very important Note Well slide, this and the following slide. This applies to all the IETF participation, whether you're participating in person or remotely. This slide tells you certain policies that you will agree to follow. You don't have to read all of this right now, it's a lot, but you'll see this text, but keep in mind that you'll see this text a lot during the IETF week, especially at the beginning of all the working group sessions. And it's really, not right now, but it's important for you to read this before you participate. The link at the top of the slide, you can click on the link at the top of the slide to get more details about Notewell. This slide is still a part of the Notewell. It lists a number of RFC documents that all IETF participants, whether participating remotely or in person, agree to follow. Please make sure that you are familiar with all these documents before participating. Any questions so far? Great, okay. So at IETF, we really make a good amount of effort to provide you with all the resources and information to get you started and integrate well during the IETF week. So for that, towards that, IETF organizes a number of events organized specifically for the newcomers. So we'll begin with the newcomers tutorial, which will be on Sunday, March 24th, between 12:30 and 1:30. Please try to attend this as it will make easier for you during the rest of the week. All information can be found on the link that is provided at the top of the slide, but basically, you'll have an IETF quick connections session from 3 to 4 on Sunday. It is basically a very good way of having a short one-to-one conversation with experienced IETFers who are mainly, some of them would be working group session chairs, and you can have a one-on-one personal conversation with them. This session has very limited seats, so it's important to register for it. Then immediately following this session, we'll have a newcomers meet and greet session from 4 to 5 on Sunday again. And this session is mainly focused on introducing you to the newcomers to the IETF leaders, mainly the working group chairs, area directors. Don't worry about who I'm talking about. You'll know who working group chairs and area directors are later in the presentation. Also, I would highly recommend getting a mentor for you if you have not registered for one yet. It's highly recommended that you get a mentor for you. It'll make things much more easier for you. They can connect you with relevant people or with or whatever you need during your IETF week. They can make things really easy. So it's highly recommended to have a mentor for yourself. Then there is a newcomers dinner that's on Monday evening, and it's organized by the Secretariat. So it's again an opportunity to mingle with other newcomers and other IETFers. At the end of the meeting on Thursday, we'll have a newcomers feedback session. It's really important for us to have your feedback so that we can improve on the areas that you feel we were lacking, or you can suggest other ways we can that we can integrate into our newcomers session. So it's really important to get your feedback to continually improve this newcomers session. So I highly recommend that you should attend it and give your feedback. Okay, so let's talk about the scope of this meeting. This presentation. So the primary purpose of this presentation is to give you the information, all the information and resources that you would need to begin your active participation during the IETF. And we really hope that this information and resources will help you survive the week. Apart from this presentation, there is a lot to learn about IETF. And it's not really possible to squeeze it all into this short hour. There is a lot of other things that you can learn about IETF, for instance, the history of IETF, how to write a standards document, and much more. And I would say that it is not really essential to know all of this at your very first meeting. You can learn as you go, but whatever you need to, the basic necessities for survival during the IETF week, we'll talk about it during this presentation. And I would again like to ask if there is any questions at this point. Okay. Also, there is this YouTube channel link that you can go to for further information. Great. So now I'm going to talk about IETF and its related organizations. I'll give you a quick overview of the structure of the IETF and the main groups and organizations that are a part of this IETF ecosystem. Great. So first and foremost, what is the mission of IETF? And I'm supposed to read it loud. So the mission of the IETF is to make the internet work better by producing high quality, relevant technical documents that influence the way people design, use, and manage the internet. So basically, this means the purpose of the IETF is defined as follows. First, to develop and maintain the standards for technologies that are used to provide internet services or to provide services over the internet. Then functionality. The mission of IETF is to ensure that the technology that we provide can perform needed functions. Scalability, to ensure that the technology will support the proper scale of deployment and usage. Another important point is security. We want to ensure that the technology itself is secure and can be securely operated and can be operated securely. And then easy deployment. We want to make sure that the technology can be deployed easily and effectively. In short, standards and technologies developed at the IETF is secure, scalable, and can be deployed effectively. So let's talk about how is IETF? IETF is a standards development organization, and it's a little different than other standards development organizations that you might have encountered. At the IETF, people participate as individuals. There is no formal membership. It's a voluntary participation. Whereas other standard development organizations typically have membership of some form. It's rarely individual based, whereas IETF is individual participation. Secondly, at the IETF, we do not have any formal voting system. We have a very informal consensus based voting, which we call HUM, and we'll get back to that later in this tutorial. Whereas other SDOs, other standard development organizations typically have some form of formal voting. So IETF is very different in that aspect. Then there is no formal or special role of government or any companies for that matter in IETF. Everyone is participating as an individual, whereas other SDOs are sometimes treaty-based. At the IETF, a standard is a standard when people use them. It's more market or adoption driven. At IETF, we do not mandate people to follow a certain standard. It is purely market driven, whereas at other SDOs, you would see some sort of mandatory standardization. The IETF focuses, this organization, IETF specifically focuses on internet technologies. There are other SDOs that cover a wide range of technical, process, and physical standards. And as I mentioned earlier, the IETF structure and decision-making is bottom-up, which is fairly unique compared with other standards development organizations. Okay, so this is an important slide. So the entire work of an IETF is a huge ecosystem. The entire work of the IETF is organized into areas of related work. And each area has certain working groups under it. Each area is managed by 2 or 3 area directors, except for the Gen area, which is owned by the IETF chair. On this slide, you are seeing there are 7 areas listed. This is not a fixed number. The number and focus of areas can change over time. Sometimes 2 or more areas may merge, or a new one might get created based on the needs. So this is all. The names of these areas are fairly self-descriptive, and if you are really interested into technology, I would say you have deeper look at all these areas and the working groups that fall under it, because and then you can start participating in those working groups. Okay, so let's talk about the IETF and its consensus mechanism. As I said, that there is no formal voting mechanism at at the IETF. Consensus is the key. This is really important to understand. It's one of the major features of IETF, as stated in its original mantra, which says that we reject kings, precedents, and voting. We believe in rough consensus and running code. So basically, the idea is to reject majority ruling at IETF. Rough consensus is really an interesting concept. It doesn't necessarily mean everyone agrees in the end. It is also not necessarily a compromise. So rough consensus is reached when all concerns and issues are heard and addressed. They are not necessarily all have to be accommodated as long as everyone can live with the outcome. Um, at the working group sessions, there is always a session chair who is responsible.
Anshal, you seem to be muted. Can you please re-enable your microphone? Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So I was saying that sorry for the interruption. The session chair at the working group is responsible to lead the discussion on a particular topic and make sure that all the dissenting opinions are heard. But these opinions should not be the controlling voice. So what we do is we measure consensus by humming. Humming is just a hum, like it's a good way to feel the temperature of the room, and it is, more importantly, it is anonymous. So no one, some people are not comfortable raising their hands or coming out expressing their opinion, where humming is kind of an anonymous way of getting them to vote. This way nobody has to raise their hand in order to make their choice known. It's also important to know that a consensus call is usually carried over to the mailing list, and it is basically repeated on the mailing list. And this is important because not everybody can attend the IETF meetings in person, but they should also be heard. So the final decisions are all usually taken over to the mailing list so that everyone can participate remotely as well. I would suggest reading RFC 7282. It's a great read. You should all go back and read more about the IETF and its consensus mechanism on that RFC. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about culture at IETF. Well, as I mentioned in the earlier slides, IETF culture is fairly unique in various aspects. People here, as it's a voluntary individual participation based organization, people tend to be very passionate, smart, and vocal about everything. This can be a little overwhelming sometimes, but they're usually really trying to get to the best possible solution. So do not get intimidated when you see people talking loud or passionately about something. Another important thing to notice is that technical excellence and topical knowledge is highly valued. So make sure you have, before participating or before saying anything on the mic, make sure that you have read the relevant documents really well. At IETF, if we talk about the dress code, it's very informal. Most people prefer to wear t-shirts and jeans, but if you want to wear formals, it's entirely up to you. Go for whatever you are comfortable with. Also, I would like to mention that this is a really, really old conference, and many people know each other for many years, which makes for a great familiar atmosphere. But it can also sometimes mean that there is a bit of an in-crowd language sometimes. So the bottom line is that don't feel intimidated. It's a very open culture, very welcoming culture. Always introduce yourself to others and try to have a good time. Wow, this is an really complicated slide, but let's talk about it. There are several other bodies apart from the ones that we talked about, the IETF areas and working groups. There are several other bodies that interact with the IETF. And in this presentation, we'll only focus on the aspects of these organizations and activities that are immediately relevant to IETF newcomers. You do not have to learn about all of these organizations, or I'll talk about a few which are relevant to your participation as a newcomer. So let's move to the next slide. So this slide provides an overview of some of these organizations. IAB, that's the Internet Architecture Board. As it suggests, it provides oversight of the Internet architecture and the standards processes. Then we have IESG, the Internet Engineering Steering Group. It is responsible for the technical management of IETF activities, including the final approval of specifications as Internet standards. It consists of area directors who are selected by NOMCOM, that is the nomination committee, and are appointed for a period of 2 years, I think. Then we have IRTF, which is the Internet Research Task Force. It focuses on this parallel organization to IETF focuses on the research issues that are related to the internet, while IETF focuses on short-term issues of engineering and standards making. There's a number of focused and long-term research groups. There is CFRG that discusses and analyzes general cryptographic aspects of security protocols. And it offers guidance on the use of emerging mechanisms and new uses of existing mechanisms. Then we have HRPC, that is Human Rights Protocol group and research group, where standards and protocols, where we discuss whether standards and protocols can enable, strengthen, or threaten human rights as defined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Then there are several others, IRTF research groups as well. There's MAPRG, ICCRG. I would highly recommend, if you're interested in that sort of thing, then you should learn more about these groups and you can actively participate in them. Then we have IAOC. It's currently being revised and it is responsible for the fiscal and administrative support for the IETF standards process. I would just like to say that do not get too much overwhelmed with all these acronyms. If you want to participate in technology, just look at the areas and the working groups that we talked about. And with more involvement and more participation in IETF, you will learn all these organizations and their role with IETF along the way. So don't get overwhelmed by all these acronyms that you'll come across this week quite a bit. And with this, I would like Rich, I would pass the baton to Rich, and he's going to present the rest of the presentation. Let me know if anyone has any questions. You can raise your hand or type your question in the chat window.
Hi, Anshul, are you going to be able to just click next on the slides for me, or should I take over as presenter?
I can do that for you whenever you say next.
Okay, great. All right, so brief introduction. My name is Rich Sauls. I've been involved with the IETF for way too long, mostly mailing lists, and then for about the past 5-6 years, I've been coming to the meetings. I don't know how that makes, but it doesn't matter because they have people who show up with T-shirts that say, IETF #1. So everybody's a newcomer to somebody else. Next, please. All right, so I'm going to be talking mostly about what the meeting is like coming up in a week and a half. There are a number of organized sessions. These are working groups, and we'll talk about some of these on the subsequent slides. We currently have about 130 working groups. Sometime before, couple months before the meeting, surveys go out to all of the working group chairmen, say, do you want to meet? They will poll the working group, or it will be obvious if the answer is yes or no sometimes. And say, yes, I need to meet for an hour, or I need to meet for 2 hours, and I, in particular, don't want to conflict with these other working groups. So, for example, you might imagine the TLS group where I'm involved doesn't want to meet in conflict with, say, HTTP, or using TLS in applications groups because there's a lot of overlap. So the scheduling, it's done by some magic at the staff, at the IETF staff, about 2-3 weeks before the meeting. First draft, final drafts are then published. Schedules and agendas can change up until and during the course of the meeting week. So you want to keep track of that, and the next couple slides will have some tools on that. We have a total, as I said, about 130 working groups. I think about half of them are meeting right now. Birds of a Feather sessions talk about, there's about, I think, 6. The Internet Research Task Force, which is separate from the Engineering Task Force, although very, very closely affiliated. There are area-wide sessions where somebody, for example, all of the security area will get together, and there might be a brief update from all of the groups that have met, and perhaps a guest speaker or a topic that's of general concern in the security area. There is what's called a plenary meeting. Plenary means everybody comes, literally. So there's a meeting usually held in the evening where some of those alphabet soup that Anshul walked through before, there'll be presentation time, a chance to meet some of the people. If it's the March meeting like this, to introduce some of the incoming new members and so on. It's usually a couple hours long. Recent additions are hackathons and code sprints. Those meet Saturday and Sunday. Tutorials and lunch sessions also meet Sunday and during the week. And then there's often a social event. This meeting there is not. But that's okay, because Prague is a wonderful city to be in and has plenty of bars and restaurants and activities going on. Next slide, please. All right. Other things that happen during the week, there's what's called hallway meetings. And you can see the picture here. This is either one of the hotel lobbies bars, or it's an area that they, a breakfast area that they set up, and it's taken over by people meeting and talking. There's lots of people on laptops, collaborating at desks, standing around, milling about, talking, and so on. What's called a bar boff, that is a meeting at a bar, usually often at the hotel bar. Sometimes the people who are familiar with the city will set something up for a bar a couple of blocks away. Big editing sessions where a working group will meet, and a couple of people who are particularly interested in a problem or problem area within a draft will get together and just sit there face to face and bash out and edit, live editing of a document to discuss later in the week or on the mailing list. There's an IETF app, iOS and Android. It's pretty good. It has the schedule. Every time you open it up, it downloads the latest agenda for changes. It has maps, floor maps. You can highlight sessions that you want to go to, and so on. It improves every time. The agenda is listed at that link at the bottom there. Also, when Tobiah has put it in the chat room. And as I said, they will post that on some boards near the registration area, on a wall or a bulletin board, and then paste on updates or announce them in the IETF 104 attendees mailing list. And as I said, things do change during the course of the week. Next, please. So working groups, as many of you probably already are aware of the term, working groups is a collection of people. It is a formal charter that says this is what we do, or this is what we're trying to do. There is a timetable for when they will do it. The best thing you can say about the timetable is it is aspirational. We thought ACME, the certificate enrollment protocol of which I am a co-chair, we thought ACME would be done in 6-9 months. It took a couple of years. Things always take longer than you expect, even when you allow for them taking longer than you expect. Most of the IETF work happens in working groups. Most of the work is done on email lists and traffic between the meetings. There's usually a flurry of email leading just to the meeting, what's called the cutoff, the last chance you can submit documents before the meeting. The face-to-face meetings are generally focused on giving updates and solving key issues. As familiar as people are with email and chat and all of those kinds of things, or GitHub issues and pull requests, you still can't beat the high-speed bandwidth of talking face-to-face with somebody who you agree or disagree with. All of the sessions are streamed over the internet using MeetEcho. The MeetEcho staff is awesome. They are also recorded and made available on the IETF YouTube channel. MeetEcho also allows for remote participation, so that somebody, and you can see in this picture here, somebody on the screen. The first screen on the right is a slide, and the screen on the left looks like it's somebody either presenting or asking a question about the slide. In the far right, you see a couple people standing there online at the microphone to talk and ask questions. As I mentioned, there's a charter, and it's negotiated with the area director to set up. And there's a thing called rechartering, where the group says, oh, we also need to do this thing, or we're done with that thing, maybe we should shut down, and that will happen with the area director. The area director is 1, 2, or 3 people who sit on top of a whole bunch of working groups. Next, please. Birds of a Feather is a much more informal meeting. It comes from the phrase, mainly English or American, birds of a feather flock together. The idea being that people with a like-minded interest will get together and talk. Often a working group will have a BOF first. Sometimes not. Sometimes a working group will be obvious, the need for it will be obvious, and so they'll just charter the group. Sometimes there'll be 1 or 2 BOFs, or 1 or 2 sessions of a given topic, and they'll decide, nope, we're not ready to have a working group yet, or we're not ever going to have a working group. This would usually include discussion of the charter. It could be a one-shot meeting. It could be proposed by a group. It's approved by the relevant area director. Generally meet only once. Most of them are once. Sometimes they meet twice. But it's much more loosely structured. Next. So, general meeting etiquette about how to be effective and to get along with folks. If you're interested in a particular area, and I'm assuming that everyone here has interests in 1 or more particular areas, read the documents of interest. So all of the documents are posted, they're publicly available. The main website is datatracker.ietf.org. And you can find the list of working groups. On each working group page, you can find, here's the documents we're looking on, here's the ones we published as RFC, here's pointers to the mailing list, how to join, here is archives of the mailing list if you want to look back. But, and also in the data tracker under the meeting meetings area, you'll find here's the agenda for each working group. Each working group has its own agenda. It helps to read the documents because most of the time when people present about a document, unless they're presenting about a new one that they'd like the group to consider, they'll just discuss the diffs from the previous version. So unless you've read it, it's hard to understand what the diff is if you don't have the base document. Try to talk to people. People are friendly. Recognize that everybody is here trying to do the same thing. It used to be, intimidating when you go up, oh, wow, years ago, I just had a nice discussion with the guy who invented file transfer. People are very approachable. Often, you can take a note during the meeting and then approach someone afterward and go, hey, I had a question about what did you mean when you said this, or so on. As a caveat to that, as Anshul mentioned, many of these people are longtime colleagues and friends. So they might talk more brusquely to each other than they will to newcomers. Don't be put off by that. Okay, no more so than any other computer person. But if you're having problems, we'll discuss options later on. Enjoy yourself. It is a lot of fun. It can be exhausting, particularly as you get more involved with different working groups, or more working groups being technically on from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night is exhausting. Remember to sleep. Certainly by the end of the week, that becomes more of a thing. But often, behavior people here is, especially after you've been coming a couple times, I might meet some people in the morning at breakfast. The meeting starts at 9:30, runs until 5. Grab a bite of dinner with colleagues or friends that I've just met, or maybe a working dinner, and then come back to the hotel, if you haven't already dropped your bags off, and then go out for a beer or two at the hotel lobby bar or something like that. It's a long day. It's fun. Remember to sleep and be respectful and tolerant towards other folks. That goes without saying. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to say it these days. Next, please. Okay, how to talk at a working group session. So that is my ACME co-chair, Yov Nir, talking. And it looks like it might actually be an ACME meeting. There'll be one or more mics, depending on the size of the room, in each room. If you want to say something, you stand up on the mic and you get in line. The chairs are responsible for tracking the agenda and how long a discussion is going on. So, and they will say, it's like, okay, I'm going to cut the line after Rich. That means he's the last person to talk on this topic. Everyone else, sit down or don't come up to the line anymore. When you get to the front of the mic, it can be intimidating. Right? You're talking to you're in front of experts. Speak directly into the mic. Say your name and affiliation every time you speak. People who've been coming for a long time, they tend to rush it really quickly. You'll hear people like Ecker Mozilla. And unless you recognize him, you'll have no way of knowing that's Eric Rescorla, who works for the Mozilla Foundation. Rich Saul's Akamai. It tends to all blur together. Was that Akamai a company, or was that his last name? Part of that is so that the people who are attending remotely who don't see you can get an idea of who's talking. There are blue sheets which provide a record of who's in the room. That's for patent concerns and helps plan the future meetings. If the working group got 12 people in it, then next meeting, if they request room for 75 people, that's going to be, well, why are you going to get 6 times as many as you did before? Listen to what people are saying. Personally, I find a really good way to help focus your listening, and it gets tired listening hour after hour after hour, even when you're talking sometimes, is to offer to be the Jabber scribe. And it's at the bottom here. For remote participation, the Jabber scribe watches the chat room to see if someone remote has a question. If so, they get to cut to the front of the line. They also post page numbers and slide decks and who is talking, so that the people remote will have an opportunity. Next slide, please. The IRTF. This is part of the same organization that runs the IETF, but they look at more research topics. They meet concurrently. Sometimes the day before they'll have meetings. IRTF meetings are open to all attendees. There's a primer there, RC 7418. One of the things that will hit you as you go through the week is people just have these numbers memorized. You know, like, well, you know, that's not really compliant with RC 2818. Oh, there's jokes about that, but eventually you catch on to the numbers. The IRTF also gives out a research prize and a grant to authors to come and present their research at an IRTF plenary. There are 7 IRTFs. One human rights is meeting, privacy preservation. How can we keep private activities and conversations on the internet in the era of what some call surveillance capitalism, right? Okay, next slide, please. Area sessions. So on the far right, see ISG Open Mic. That's the steering committee that's composed of all the area directors and a couple other people. They all meet at the dais up at front. The the plenary is usually in the evening, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They take over the biggest ballroom. They open it all up, and everybody who attends the IETF meeting, which can be, you know, is invited to attend the plenary. Not everybody does. Some people find it boring after time. They always run too long. But don't let me dissuade you. It can be interesting and worthwhile. There are sometimes guest speakers who can be really very engaging. Dave Clark, I remember recently, talked about how you want to tilt the playing field when you define a standard. If you care about privacy, then maybe you enable encryption by default, things like that. The one on the far left is a talk about where particular sets of standards should be done, the IETF or ITU. Area sessions, the one in, I don't think. Area sessions are, for example, all of the transport area will get together and there'll be a couple presentations or updates from what's going on in transport or what's going on in routing and so on. Lunchtime talks, and there's one being given, I think, at this session, this meeting on the architecture of a high-performance router these days, you know, what that's like. Next. Often the sponsor of the meeting, the company gets to have a speaker come in exchange for buying everybody lunch and snacks and food and stuff during the week. The hackathon, Code Sprints, Code Lounge. So the hackathon is for working on the IETF tools. That meets all day Saturday. I've been to a few that's pretty low key. Quiet room, people just typing away, and someone going, okay, I'll take this ticket. That kind of stuff. Hackathons are where working groups or people participating in working groups try to test their interoperable solutions. TEEP, the Trusted Execution Environment, has met a couple of times. And for example, they have a single board computer from ARM, and they're testing how they can securely code into the trusted execution zone, their equivalent of Intel SGX. Maybe that's not as interesting now, but new features in the domain service. How can I talk, or quick? You know, Facebook will be there, Amazon will be there, Google will be there, and they're all trying to make their quick implementations interoperate. That's what the big picture on the bottom is. That's all. It's Saturday and Sunday. Free to attend. You just have to sign up and say, well, this is what I want to work on. Bring your laptop or programming device, and away you go. The Code Lounge is a room open up during the week. It's usually where the hackathon is. If people want to get away and need to either write some code or discuss code, or even, as I said, the mass editing, intense group editing that happens before it, that can happen in the code lounge. Next, please. Networking and social events. So there is no social event this year. The one on the left is from the Singapore last the meeting in Singapore. We met at the National Aquarium in front of huge fish tanks. Another social event that is happening this year is the Sisters Lunch, SYSTERS. I think this was also Singapore. Free lunch. Anyone who, I guess these days we would say, presents as female. But it's a informal group. There's a mailing list also. Everything in the IETF has mailing lists. Obviously, I haven't been, but yeah, it's a good way to meet friends and socialize in the context of the IETF meeting. Next, please. Okay, before resources, I'll just mention one other thing that's happening this meeting as an experiment, is that Wednesday afternoon is set aside for unstructured meeting activity. I think that's the phrase used. If you want to get together and say, hey, let's get a bunch of people together and talk about the privacy implications of DNS over TLS, over HTTPS. There's going to be a sign up. I think there's a sign up wiki entry right now. You can find it in the IETF 104 section. There's also be whiteboards up there and so on, but it's a good place to have unscheduled informal meetings. A bunch of people, yeah, I want to get together and work with you on this part of the DNS stuff. So I know DNS is having a couple of side meetings there. So let me talk briefly about some of the resources and tools that are available to you. Next slide, please. Most of these are available during the week. The RFC editor, those are the people who do the actual copy editing. They don't rewrite documents. They turn computer geek speak into English, but they will push things back and say, hey, did you mean this? Or, earlier you said was, and now you're saying is. It's what changed. The other thing, so the RFC editor, there'll usually be a presentation at the plenary, showing, if nothing else, how many things have been published since the last meeting. They have a table set up right near the registration area, and they always have little candies. Sometimes they're local, sometimes they're little bags of M&Ms, but say hi, grab a bag of candy. That's what I do. The IANA staff, those are the people who maintain the lists of what port numbers, is HTTP, 53 is DNS, 119 is NNTP, and so on. But all of the assigned numbers and registrations, they handle all of that clerical work. The secretariat, who is shown here in the picture, most of them are wearing their official blue team shirt. These are the people who make the meetings run. If you get there early, you can see many of them running around frantically trying to make sure every room has the right video equipment, that the network is up. They don't run the network, but they will contact the people who do. If the meeting rooms overflow, they'll make sure that the room, the food isn't coming out quick enough at the opening greeting meeting. They handle all of that. They will be, after Monday, they sit at the registration desk, collect the blue sheets from the working group chairs and so on. All very friendly people, all amazingly nice people for putting up with, hundreds, if not over 1,000 nerds putting demands on them. The executive director is a woman named Portia, also very nice and competent, who runs the whole administrative financial arm of all of this stuff. Next slide, please. The Ombuds team, because it's not ombudsmen, it's a team. The IETF does not tolerate harassment. You can see the link there on the page. We have an anti-harassment policy. If you feel harassed, intimidated, assaulted, not shy, but if somebody is doing something or a chair is doing something, or, you know, that makes you feel uncomfortable and less valuable, contact one of these people. There's ways in the, as it says in the doc there, on how to contact them. Allison and Pete have been involved in the IETF for probably decades. So is Melinda, but she's a new member of the team, having just stepped up to replace, I forget who the previous one was. But they're very nice, friendly, warm people, and will talk to you and address your concerns. Next. Badges and dots and ribbons. So this used to be more formally organized. The one that counts the most is the white smiley face there in the upper right corner badge. That says, yeah, I explicitly have said, come talk to me if you have questions. The blue says, the blue dot says you're a working group chair, and the name of the working group will be in, so you can contact them. The various other ones, you know, may not matter too much. IAB is the senior technical, IESG and IAB are the senior technical people, research group, and so on. The tags that go underneath, ombudsman team, newcomer, host. The newcomer is worthwhile, one, to meet fellow newcomers. And say, you know, oh my God, can you believe what just happened? Oh my gosh, can you believe what's been going on here? This is crazy. I'm never coming back, or I'm always coming back. Thanks, Tobiah, we didn't know. You now have the opportunity to get your own label and write your own, not your own label, your own label, but your own banner, tag, whatever it's called, and write anything you want on it. So they become less useful. As I said, the most useful thing is if you have questions or wandering around unsure. Anybody with a badge on is experienced, it can help. People with the white sticker on, anyone with a dot on is experienced, it can help. People with a white sticker have explicitly said, please come talk to me. Next. Also, when you get your badge, you can decide whether or not you want to be photographed, and there will be 2 different color lanyards, you know, the string that goes around your neck and clips to the badge. So you can decide. You can change your mind at any time. There's always plenty of lanyards there. Yeah, because there are roving photographers. And you can, you know, that's how we got all of the pages on these last slides, on the slide deck. And you can say, no, I really don't want to have my picture taken, and we will respect that. There's links here on page 10 on the slides, talks to the tutorials. Anshul and I will be giving this, no, I'll be giving this tutorial with Miriam. Anshul will be working on the hackathon Sunday. There's going to be tutorials on how to write RFCs using the tools we've got, how to use GitHub to do documents and so on. There's a meeting wiki, which often has places where people sign up for rideshare. From experience, if you land in Praha Airport, just take the mass transit. You take a bus to the state, and then you get on the subway, and you can end up right in front of the hotel, pretty much. Next slide, please. There is a first-time attendees mailing list. Encourage you to join it. You don't have to. No one's going to check one way or the other. But it's a good place to, you know, a welcoming place to ask newcomers questions. The Sisters mailing group has a blog, and there's also a mailing list. There is meeting. One of the things we do is the IETF makes some arrangements for travel companions, you know, your spouse or partner. We have some activities for them to do, and organized email space for partners to hook up and talk to other people who are also in that same situation. Prague, if you're coming, is a amazing city to be a tourist in. Next. More information. So the data tracker, as I mentioned before, that's the left link in the top right page. That is the home of all IETF knowledge, all IETF working groups. It's not like the IETF brochure site, the main site, which typically has, here's what we do, here's how we do it, here's the meetings. But the data tracker will have, and if you look, you squint, you can see there's an About tab that says, here's the working group charter. Documents, here's the things we're working on. Red flag means we're waiting for something. The meetings we've had, and so on. The tools page, I wouldn't worry about as much, but it has a collection of tools to make it easier to develop RFCs and so on. You wouldn't worry about it much yet, unless you're already starting to write a document. Next page. Participation. So they're the handsome guy in the jacket, third over, right next to the white shirt. That's Tobiah, our host, right? Yes. They run Meet Echo. It's a pretty amazing, video conferencing that comes up, goes down during the course of the week. I mean, it comes up, stays up, and then they take it down at the end of the week. You don't have to participate face-to-face. It's actually reasonably okay to participate remotely. It's about as good as your average, at least as good as your average corporate video conf. Next. And I mean that as a compliment. The network. The IETF runs its own network. And what that means is we've made arrangements with the hotel and the local telecom service. We run our own high-speed leased lines into the hotel, into all the meeting rooms. Wi-Fi is there. It's really good. There's a terminal room which has no terminals. It's got printers. It's got wired connectivity if you need to plug in your laptop and get the Wi-Fi working. There are IPv6, IPv4, 6 to 4, Legacy, which is the plain text unencrypted network. Don't use that one. And there'll be notices during the week when if there's any issues. But the people there are pretty amazing. And it's impressive what kind of network they get. And you'll never see fast speed like that in a hotel outside of the IETF. Next. I know I'm about out of time. Jabber. Jabber is how we do messaging during the meetings. Number 3 there, if you want to care about the quick meeting, you can join the chat, QUIC@jabber.ietf.org. There's a list of clients. That's where the Jabber scribe provides the context for remote people. Oh, we're on page 17 of this slide, and Eric is talking. Next slide, please. Enjoy yourself. It's no coincidence that all of these people are happy. Elliot there holding his badge up as being a goof. Allison there on the upper left, also on the Ombuds team. It's 5, 6, 7 Techapalooza. A lot of information, a chance to make some excellent contacts. Feel free to go up to anyone after a working session and go, hey, I'd like that. Are you sure you meant this? Or I didn't quite understand what you were trying to say. People will love to talk about the internet and technology. That's why we're all here. That's why we're all coming to the IETF meeting. And with that, our time is up and our slides are done. I will be at the Newcomers tutorial. Feel free to come up and ask questions. The last slide here, we do really want answers on the survey. There's an edu team, which is kind of like a working group to educate people. They organize the tutorials, such as this one, the tutorials that are on Sunday, the guides program. and the debrief session on Thursday morning. The survey is pretty easy to fill out. You can, I attended this, and here's what I thought about it. I think a couple sessions ago, we got like 3 answers. Last time we got like 30 answers. So it really helps, and we use that feedback to iterate on the next generation of slides and talks and events. So if you have ideas about other ways to help newcomers along, that's really why Anshul, Karen, and myself, among a staff, among a group of dozens, is here. Please let us know. Karen, is there any closing words you want to say?
No, thank you. Like you said, fill out the survey, and I hope you enjoy the meeting.
Thank you, everyone. See you next week, a week and a half.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Tobiah.